How many of you know somebody who is gay, lesbian, or bisexual, if you'd raise your hand? Thank you. Now, if your hand is not up, and I know that you all signed up for this, so, and it may be a little different if people were all required to be here. If your hand is not up, I suggest you do know somebody, you just don't know you know them. Because most social scientists use a percentage between 10 and 5%. I think it's closer to 10, but you use whatever percentage you want. Somebody in your grade school had to have been homosexual, right? And gay kids, incidentally, are aware of their feelings at the same age that heterosexual kids are. And we're aware of our feelings long before we ever act on them. But just as the heterosexual people in this room probably knew around age 11 who your first crush was on, right? If you think back to your life, who was your first crush on? Was it a teacher or a friend of a friend or who? You knew. And it doesn't mean that you thought about having sex with a person. It just meant that the heart was beating a little faster and that you wanted to spend time around them, right? Gay kids know at the same age. But they don't grow up in a world that says, tell us about it, right? They grew up in a world that says, tell us about your heterosexual feelings, right? So I want to suggest to you that somebody in your grade school was having the same feelings that you were at the same age, but they were having feelings for people the same gender, and they couldn't tell anybody. They couldn't tell their mom or their dad for fear of losing their love. They couldn't tell their brothers or sisters, right? And kids today are coming out a little earlier than they did 30, 40 years ago. I mean, you got kids coming out in high school, but still the overwhelming majority of people in this company and in schools are still not out. There is an iceberg out there, and there are some that are out, and it makes it easier for the rest of us when they're out because they help put a face on the issue. But the majority of people still today, even with TV shows, that are Emmy Award-winning comedies that celebrate being gay, still the majority of people are still too afraid today. So I suggest somebody in your grade school probably was, certainly in your high school, and probably also in your family, right? Are there people in this room who have family members who are gay, lesbian? But raise them high if you would. See, because thank you. No one pays attention to that statistic. We talk about, well, maybe 10% of the workforce is gay or lesbian. A larger percentage is bisexual. But what about all the moms and dads and brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and aunts and uncles who work in the workforce who have gay relatives who are equally offended by an anti-gay comment? You see, because I don't have to be black to let go of the rope when I hear a racist comment, do I? If I'm on the rope and I think this is my team and I'm proud of you and somebody makes a racist comment, I'm going to let go of the rope too. It doesn't have to just affect me personally. And so the aunts and uncles and moms and dads of gay people are letting go of the rope if they hear derogatory comments about the people they love, right? I think some of you would have elected me class president. I was class president in my high school. I was senior class. The 200 men in my class elected me class president. I was an altar boy. I was a patrol boy. I was a Boy Scout. I was on the basketball team. And you might have said, well, Brian, did they know you were? Oh no, they never would have elected me class president, right? Right? The horror, and I hope you'll remember these words today as we make this journey forward. And I want to suggest the same is probably true for transgender people, because transgender people. And transgender people are people who are aware at an early age that their identity doesn't fit this body they were born with. They were born with a male body and they don't see themselves as male. Or they were born with a female body and they just don't identify as female. And how do you tell anyone that secret? I think it's hard to be gay. Try being transgender. How do you tell your mom or your dad that you don't identify as the gender that they have been raising? So the horror of growing up as a gay person or as a transgender person is the horror of having a secret that you don't understand. Say, how do I understand my secret when there's no books in our family shelf? How many of you had a book on homosexuality in your family library growing up? Right? So where were you supposed to learn about this? Where were you heard words like homo, right? Queer, pansy, fairy, Mary, Tinkerbell, dyke. You heard these words, right? Fag, don't be a fag. Fag is the big word today, right? Or that's so gay. If you're a little kid, where are you supposed to get information on this? So your anxiety is high because you've got a secret that you know is not a polite secret. It's a secret that's going to cause shame on your part and your parents' part too. So it's a secret you don't understand and you're afraid to tell anyone for fear that they won't love you anymore. That's, if you can remember those words, for the music of the person who's gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, it's, I have a secret that I've had since I was little that I didn't understand. I was afraid to tell anyone for fear that once I did, they wouldn't love me anymore. And it still happens. Because telling your secret happens more than just once in your life. See, I came out of the New York Times, right? That was not my intention, but that's the way it happened, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But that doesn't mean that I don't have to keep coming out every day, right? I get on an airplane, and the person sitting next to me on the plane says, so what were you doing, with this company we were just talking to? I have to decide, do I tell them what I was doing? The driver who brought me here, if he had asked, well, so why are you going to this company to talk? What are you talking about? Each day I have to decide, do I come out and do I deal with the reaction that I'm going to get? I was in a cab one time in Ohio, and the cab driver says, so are you, I get in the cab, he says, so are you married? Now, those of you who are heterosexual, you get these questions all the time, but you're not aware you get them because they're easy, right? Yes, no, right? But a gay person has to decide, how do I answer this question? Now, Ray and I were married in Canada in 2003. We came together in 1976, and we've been together ever since. And in 2003, we went to Canada and got married. But this happened before then, so the cab driver said, so are you married? And I said, no, I'm gay. Now, some of you may say, why did you have to tell the cab driver that you're gay? Because he asked. I didn't get in the cab and say, I'm gay, take me to the Sheraton. I got in the cab and said, take me to the Sheraton, please, and he said, are you married? Right? It's like some people say, well, why do gay people have to keep flaunting it? Because you keep asking. What did you do over the weekend? That's a question, is it not? What did you do over the weekend? So if I say Ray and I went to see a movie, well, you don't have to push it in my face. Don't well, you asked. Right? Did you want me to edit Ray's name out? Whose comfort level are we dealing with here? Because see, if I don't tell you the truth about myself, and you don't know this, I beat myself up all day long. If I hadn't said to the cab driver, I'm gay, I would have gotten out of the cab and all day long thought, Brian, why did you deny who you were for the sake of his comfort? Why did you do that? And he's not even aware of it. The rest of the day he can't even remember me, right? Because I dodged his question, I gave him a tip, and that was it. But I'm sitting there reliving all day why I didn't tell the truth, right? It takes a terrible toll on you, right? And it takes a terrible toll on you at work. Right? When you have to deny all day who you are, you don't put a picture of the person you love as a screensaver, because you're terrified of people saying, who's that, right? Or you don't make a personal phone call that can be overheard because you're afraid of people saying, well, they keep talking to the same person, And he calls them honey. Right? And you don't put a bumper sticker on your car, that says anything about you. And you don't participate in discussions at the cafeteria because you're afraid if it's about a gay issue, you're going to be too enthusiastic. You're constantly censoring yourself, and you don't bring the person you love most to a company function. You either come alone or you don't go. Right? And this is a terrible waste of energy, isn't it? And it happens outside of work too. If Ray and I were at a movie theater and I'm in the closet and I ran into one of you and you were with your partner and you like me and your spouse and you wave to me and say, come on over, I want you to meet. And I don't, and you think, well, what's wrong with him? Well, the reason I don't is how am I supposed to introduce Ray to you? Oh, just say he's your friend. Oh, yeah? Well, then you call your husband or wife your friend and see what kind of a discussion follows. Right? I'd like you to meet my roommate. Right? You're going to miss the first half of the movie. What do you mean, my roommate? Right? And so this is a waste of energy, and it does not contribute to the productivity of employees. This is all about how do we, again, go back and create a safe and productive work environment. So let's do a little vocabulary and a little sex education. But before we do, I want to find out if you have any questions. Any questions so far, comments that you'd like to make about anything that I've shared with you? Yes, please. What did the cab driver say back to you when you said? It's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. So I said, I'm gay. And he said, well, as long as you don't come after me or my kids, I'm fine with that. Well, you got to know I can't leave that one floating in the cab. So I said to him, no offense, but why would you think I would be attracted to you? I mean, what is is it not, well, I'm male. Yeah. And you're not my type, right? Isn't that part of, the anxiety? Part of the anxiety is, if he's gay, male, and I'm male, now we got trouble, right? No, you don't. Sometimes, if we had time, and we don't have time to take a bathroom break, but if we had a bathroom break, sometimes I'll go into the bathroom and it's complete silence. I'll walk in, people talking, and I'll walk in and you get really quiet. I'll say, I don't say this, but I want to, excuse me, this is not a sexual experience for me. I'm just going to the bathroom. But there's anxiety about it, isn't there? Why is there anxiety? Because no one sat down and talked about it. Your dad didn't sit around and talk to you about this. Your mom, they never thought you'd meet a gay person, so why do you have to bring this stuff up? They never did. You won't either, if you're lucky. So we don't talk about this stuff. And I said, secondly, this thing about children. The overwhelming majority of children who are abused in our culture are young girls who are sexually abused by an adult male. And we don't call that heterosexuality. It's not. It's pedophilia, which is very different than heterosexuality. Heterosexuality is about people of the same age group, right? That's men attracted to women. Children don't have bodies that are developed. It's pedophilia. But most of the victims are girls, and most of the perpetrators are adult men, right? But it's, again, that mythology that's created by the shush, the stereotypes and the jokes that you all heard and I heard growing up. And it took me a long time to get them out of my system. And I'm a gay person. I had to decide for myself. Oliver North, for instance, said, if Bill Clinton is successful on lifting the ban on gays in the military, no real man will ever enlist again. The line in the sand was that if you're heterosexual, you're a real man. That's all you have to be is heterosexual to be a real man. And if you're gay, you're not a real man. And so on my journey, I've had to decide, what is a real man? Because in whose opinion do I accept? Oliver North's? Or my father's? Or my coach's? Or mine, right? And all of you have made, I think, similar journeys on your life. Women have had to deal with, do I trust what the culture is telling me about myself and my abilities? Or do I say, no, I'm not going to abide by your expectations of me, right? Am I right? People with disabilities have to say the same thing. Everybody has got to decide for themselves. People of color were raised in a culture. Do you know that when Brown versus the Board of Education came before the U.S. Supreme Court, one way they proved the power of segregation was that they showed that in every study conducted in the South, when a black child was offered the choice between a white doll or a black doll, the black child picked the white doll? Why? Because the culture had said white is right, right? Right? And who famous at that time was black? Who could the black child look at and say, I want my doll to grow up to be just like that person? There wasn't anybody famous, right? So if I'm going to be able to pick a doll, I got to pick one that's going to grow up and be famous, right? So the black community has had to overcome the culture's message to it about itself. Well, I did too. All the jokes that you've all heard, I've had to confront myself and say, are you a real man? Are you moral? Does God love you? What is love? What does it mean to be with another person? Are you masculine enough? All this stuff, I've had to do the journey on my own, right? But because I've created music, I hope, around myself that allows people to say, hey, maybe some of that stuff's not true, And maybe I can take another look at this and be less afraid the next time I run into somebody who is gay. Okay, good question, though. Any others? Okay, let me ask you one thing. Yes, please.
How do you introduce your partner, Ray?
Well, that's a very good, how do I introduce my partner, Ray? And it depends on the audience. If now he legally is my spouse, but I've been calling him my partner for so long, I usually say this is my partner, Ray. The problem with that is that Scrooge and Marley were partners, and they weren't life partners, right? So sometimes people get confused. What kind of partner are you? Are you business partners? So you have to be aware. You have to help. Sometimes I'll say life partner. But legally he's now, at least in Canada, he's my spouse. And the state of Massachusetts would recognize that too. The state of Florida does not. But so I say he's my partner. Good question. I have a quick question for you if I can. Yes, and then I'm going to come back to you. How would you describe, just to give us an idea of where you all are, how would you describe the environment where you work for gay, lesbian, and bisexual people? And we'll do transgender in a second. If I had 4 easels here and each of them had an answer, I want you to vote with me. Would you say that where you work, and I'm talking about not the whole company, but where you work, would you say that it is very hostile for gay people, somewhat hostile, somewhat accepting, or very accepting? Okay, and there's no right or wrong answer here, right? Just base it upon your own experiences of the music, right? How many people would say you think the environment's very hostile? Okay, I didn't think anyone would say that. Somewhat hostile. Raise them high so everyone can see. And I know you all don't work in the same area, so we're right. Okay, somewhat hostile. Somewhat accepting, overwhelming majority, and very accepting. Okay, handful. About as many people for very accepting as somewhat hostile. Let's really quickly do the transgender issue. How would you describe the environment for transgender people? Very hostile, somewhat accepting, or very accepting? How many people would say that it would probably be, if a transgender person was came into your department, how many people would say it was a very hostile environment? Okay, somewhat hostile. Raise them high if you would. Somewhat accepting. And very accepting? Okay, so it's not where the gay issue is in terms of people's understanding and ability to respond to it intelligently. Is that what you would agree, that it's a new topic, and so the anxiety that people feel about it is probably what prompts some of the hostility in some of the comments? Those of you who said that the environment was somewhat hostile for gay and lesbian people, would you tell me why you would vote that way? Why would you think it was somewhat, just anecdotally? Anything? Did you have your hand up? No? In the back?
I've actually heard comments saying that it was against their religion. You know, like being gay is against their religion and it's wrong. And no one saying anything back to that person.
So you heard a comment that said, a person said, homosexuality is against my religion and it's wrong, and because no one responded to it, that left you with the impression that it wouldn't be a comfortable environment for someone who is gay or lesbian to be in. Thank you. Anybody else?
I think there's not a lot of discussion or understanding around the topic, therefore it's simply not acknowledged. So in that case, I would say you can't really say it's somewhat accepting. So by default, I have to say it's somewhat hostile.
Because there's a lack of discussion around the topic, there seems to be silence where you work, you would interpret that as somewhat hostile as opposed to somewhat accepting because you think the silence is not affirmation, it's more discomfort. Yeah. Is that accurate? And that would create for the gay person in that environment a feeling of non-acceptance. Okay, thank you. Anybody? Yes, in the back.
That expresses a lot of homophobia. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to the people about it, and I think they're in the unconscious incompetence section that you talked about. They just don't realize that it could be offensive.
The jokes that people are saying where you work are "that's so gay," or "don't touch me," or "that looks like a man's purse," and you feel that they're unconsciously incompetent. I have no idea what a man's purse looks like, but a gay person in that environment would feel they better not talk about who they are for fear that they were going to get not a supportive response. Yeah. Thank you. Yes?
I was going to agree with the other woman that it's just not acknowledged or tolerated, really. If you look at, pictures, there's really no people who are gay can't put pictures up of their lovers or partners or anything like that. So it's not tolerated or acknowledged.
So people who are gay where you work probably wouldn't put a picture of the person they cared about in their workstation because it's not acknowledged and they wouldn't trust that the response they got was positive.
Right. People tend to ignore it.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I had a boss that told me that being gay was a sin. Just like murder is a sin.
Oh dear. So a boss that said, somebody who actually came out, how long ago was this? Oh dear. Okay, a boss who said it's a sin just like murder is a sin. Okay, now just from my perspective, all the examples that you have given me are violations of your code of conduct. Am I correct, Deb, that all of these examples are not just oopses, they really are things that people are not supposed to be engaging in. If you ever question it, if you think, I don't know, one easy way to do is just transfer it to a subject in which we're more comfortable with and clearer on, like race. If this joke was about race, would it be tolerated? If such a comment was made about race, would it be tolerated? And, the answer I hope you come up with is no. But sometimes people think, well, I don't know whether, this is derogatory. It is. It is. It's in the same way that you make fun of anyone else's mannerisms because of their ethnicity or because of their gender. It's inappropriate, and it doesn't make me want to stay on the rope. And that's why we're all supposed to be invested in this, because we want to stay a competitive company, right? And it's not about running and tattling. It's more about how do we stop the behaviors and say, hey, that's wrong. Now, please. Or somebody I care about is gay, and I really am offended by that comment. That really helps. If you say somebody I care about. You don't have to say I am myself if you're not, but if somebody I care about, usually it stops that kind of a joke. Anybody else with examples? Yes, one more?
The example I would give is I work with a coworker who is gay, and we got together, we had drinks one night after work, a group of people, because he took a new job, and there was someone I had invited that he didn't meet who was a male, and he saw that male at work the next day, and the male went up and shook his hand and said hello and is always very friendly with him. And the comment my gay friend had made was that it was so nice, this guy's approach was so nice, because he feels that typically the men are afraid to be friendly to him because they'll think that they're, that they're inviting reciprocity in terms of a sexual relationship or something like that. So it's like a micro inequity where, he feels like males aren't friendly with him because of a fear that they have about,
Right.
That they're inviting something or whatever.
So this gay friend of yours was impressed that some heterosexual male that he met, after finding out that he was gay, was just as friendly as he was the day before without self-consciousness. And your explanation is that it could be because the person is afraid to do that for fear that the person might misinterpret it.
That's what my friend said.
Right. I have a different take on it for you. This issue is different than almost any other diversity issue in that I can be an ally for people of color and not lose white male status. It is very clear that I'm a white male. So if I march with people of color, go to a diversity event, no one's questioning why are you there, right? Unless you have a button that says straight but not narrow, people want to know, why are you so interested in this topic? Am I right? I mean, if we went downtown and had a little march for gay rights today and CNN showed up, you're going to get phone calls. People say, well, why were you there? Right? Are you not heterosexual? Even reading a book, right? I have a book out called Gay Issues in the Workplace. Could you comfortably go to a bookstore and ask for it? And it raises anxiety on the part of people. Price check, aisle 3, this person wants the book, Gay Issues in the Workplace, right? And that stops some people from being allies for fear that their sexual orientation is going to be called into question. Okay. Let me ask you a second question. I work with you, and I like you. And you and I go out to lunch often, and after about 4 or 5 months of going out to lunch, I decide to tell you that I'm gay. And I'm telling you because I like you and I trust you. And I haven't told anybody else at work. I want you to help me think through what the best thing for me to do would be where you work. Should I stay in the closet and not let anybody but you know? Now, you care about me and you care about my career at this company. Should I come out to a few close friends? Should I come out to my supervisor? Or should I come out to everyone? And when we say come out to everyone, we are not talking about a bullhorn in the hallway. Good morning. It's Gay Brian here. Right? What do we mean? We mean that you acknowledge who you are, you don't lie about your weekends, you put pictures of the person you love on your, right? All the things we've been talking about. So raising your hands, what do you think would be best for me where you work? Stay in the closet? Anybody? And I know you're not, don't give advice. Some people say, well, I don't give advice. I know. Just in your heart, what do you think would be best? Come out to a few close friends. Okay. Come out to your supervisor. Thank you. How many of you are supervisors in any? Okay. We'll come back to that one then. And come out to everyone. Did everyone vote? I think there are a lot of people who didn't vote. Is that because you don't know what to do? Because you don't know what's best for me, or because you don't know what's going to happen to me when I come out? Yes?
Between wanting you to just come out and not worry about it,
Yeah.
and also wanting to say, but I want you to protect yourself, so maybe you should start small and
Right.
start with your friends, and maybe go from there.
Right.
You know, so I was torn. So that's why I didn't vote.
So you cared about me and you didn't know what would happen to me. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Well, I guess my comment is like being an African American. Like, we can't hide that. So it's one of the things, like, people, if they're not comfortable with it, I think the exposure, like, people have the chance to ask me whatever question about my being African American they want. So that may decrease their anxiety levels, I think, with people coming out. So people, because there are people that don't know, you know, it gives them the chance for people that don't know to maybe ask questions, or as you termed, like, hear the music, you know, to see if they're able to ask you questions about that. So.
As an African American, you say you don't have a choice. I have had actually some people in the workshop who say I'm African American, but I can pass, and so I identify with your need to keep coming out to let people know who I am. But the point is that people can talk to you because they know who you are, and it would make it easier for people to get past their fear if they had a face to go with the issue and be able to ask questions. I personally agree with that. It's very hard to make that decision for someone else, but I do know that the more people who come out, the easier it is for everybody, gay, straight alike, because we now at least can talk about it and not delude ourselves to the fact that there's no one around affected by this topic. Yeah. Anybody else on this? Yes, please.
Comes with someone coming out, you know. From my experience, you know, I can't dodge some of the dumb questions I get asked because, you know, people see my diversity, but I would want them to, you know, dodge those questions.
You'd like your experience is that you get asked some dumb questions. Can I just say, but that does not mean you don't want to ask people to ask you questions, am I right? I mean, some of them are dumb, but you'd prefer that they ask than not ask, or not?
I guess it's the way they phrase them.
Oh, absolutely. How people ask questions, you know. Are you sick or what? That's not helpful. So just like, you know, it's like when I say to people, if you're a parent of a gay child, please pick the way you say I love you to the child. You know, don't say, if you're gay or an axe murderer, I'll love you all the same, you know. Thank you for the comparison, right? Or regardless of who you are, and because of who you are, I love you. It's a very different approach, isn't it? So yes, you'd like the questions asked. You'd like it asked in a way that's respectful. And you'd like to spare the gay person the disrespectful questions if you had the option. But you'd like them to be able to come out.
Right.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
But there are no books on how to come out for each individual.
No, there aren't. There are no books on how to come out.
How do you deal with coming out at work when you might not even do it with your relatives, your family, your parents?
The question is, how do you come out at work if you haven't done it with your relatives, your family, your parents? Some people come out at work and not to their family because they feel safer at work than they do with their family. And the opposite is true. Some people are out to family but not at work because they don't trust the longevity of the work relationship or don't see the importance of being out at work. They are in their own cubicle, they do their work, they go home, there's no interaction except at lunch, and they sit by themselves. And there are heterosexual people who feel the same way. One of the things we need to acknowledge is there is not one right or wrong way to do this. Everyone is individual. I like to talk to people about what's important to me and to find out what's important to them. That's how I create intimacy in my life. My younger brother, who is also gay, even though I came out publicly, for many, many years, never said he was gay, even though he was in a relationship. He was playing cards with my dad one time and he used the word gay. My dad said, "That's the first time you've used that word." Now, we're from the same family, and I had created this safe space. Why not? Because his personality was different. You know, his needs were different than mine were. So everyone is different. I do think that it is smart to test the waters, to come out with people. Who do you come out to first? The people you care about, right? And that may be an office mate. You know, it may be somebody that you, and how do I know? This is an important question. How do I know I can tell you? Because I'm listening, right? How did E.T. get brought out of the shed? Anyone remember how Elliot got E.T. to leave the shed? No, it wasn't. It was Reese's Pieces. M&M's is kicking themselves for not accepting that franchise. It was Reese's Pieces, and so sometimes, and you know this is true on all issues, you need to sweeten the pot, right? Before you're going to trust me, you need to hear me talk about issues that are of concern to you, and you need to find out what my music is. How am I on women's issues? You know, do I use the term girl, or do I use the term woman? What kind of vocabulary am I using around race issues or religion issues? Is it respectful or is it just... You're listening before you decide to come up at the end of the room or at the end of the day, right? Because you got to decide on your own whether or not you feel you're going to be safe and valued with me. And I'm doing the same with you always. Gay and lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people, our ears are there. I had an experience where a dorm advisor at Notre Dame University, I was doing a training for them, said to me, "Brian, I had a gay kid come out to me, and I said to him, 'Why did you think you could tell me that you were gay?' And he said, 'Because a few weeks ago, one of the RAs told an anti-gay joke, and you were the only one who didn't laugh at it.'" He wasn't aware he was being watched, but that student heard the joke and then watched to see the reactions. And when he noticed that one person did not laugh and seemed disapproving of the joke, that was the person he was going to go speak to. So that's how we can create a space in which people feel they can come to us. And you're not going to go to a boss who tells you that you're being gay is the same as being a murderer, right? You're going to avoid people who are going to judge you like that. You're going to be attracted to people who stick up on the issue even when you're not around. You had your hand up.
The point where you said about coming out, even as an African-American woman in corporate America, you often, from a cultural standpoint, identify when do I come out, or if you want to wear your hair in braids, or different things from a cultural standpoint, or do I wear my hair a certain way so that I fit in at work. So it's not just from a gay issue, it can be from a cultural issue. Can I wrap my hair? Can I wear something that's different? Is it okay? Am I going to stand out, or do I want to fit in with the norm?
That's a really good point, that you don't have to come out as being black, but you do have to come out in terms of the celebration of your ethnicity, right? You have to decide how safe is it for me to be ethnocentric, right? Or is it going to be safer for me to keep that to the side and blend in, right? So this is about all of us, and the company is listening. This is the music that you're putting out today, saying, "Hey, I want to be on the rope too, and I don't want to be, and I want to be able to wear to work something that celebrates me, but I'm still going to be there early, leave late, do the best job I can. Judge me on that, and not on the color of the top that I happen to be wearing that day." Right? Good. Yes.
If someone comes out to you in the workplace, what do you do? They're not necessarily looking for advice.
No, they aren't. That's a wonderful question. And incidentally, it goes beyond the workplace. I decide to tell you who I am. The first thing to understand is that this is really important for us, you and me. I've selected you. It's not like I'm walking down the hall passing you, and by the way, I'm gay. This is, I've asked you, for lunch, or we're doing it in whatever setting. I've selected you among everybody else, right? So there's got to be some sense of privilege there, some sense of being honored by this information. And I'm not telling you to burden you with it, because it's not a burden for me. Right? I'm sharing it with you because I sense that our relationship will be enhanced by you having access to this information. I will relax more. You will relax more because you know something's going on anyway. I've dodged all kinds of conversations with you, right, in terms of being specific. Suddenly, we don't have to play those games anymore. A first response for me is thank you for telling me. Right? Period. Thank you for telling me. Is there anything you'd like me to do to be more supportive than you feel I already am? I trust that this information is private and I'm not going to be sharing it with anybody else without your permission. I may say, oh, don't worry about it. You know, I have spoken to some others, or I may say, thank you, I really appreciate that. Is that helpful? And you know, again, try to read the person's music on this. You know, are they looking away as they talk to you about it? How uncomfortable are they? And in some ways, those of you who are heterosexual, in this issue, I want you to see yourself as having privilege. You have status, you have power, you have privilege that the gay person who's coming out does not have. They may have more money than you do. They may have a bigger car. They may even be in a higher position in the company than you are. But at that moment, you have privilege because you represent to them the majority. You represent to them at that moment all the people their life they have avoided judgment from. School teachers, clergy persons, aunts, uncles, grandparents, you represent them at that moment. That's why sometimes when I'm in the midst of my story, you know, and I look out and somebody's in the audience happens to be crying, that person immediately becomes, for me, a relative who didn't give me the approval when I was growing up, who at that moment, you know, there's a transference going on because I'm getting it at this moment from this heterosexual stranger. So I'm not saying I don't want you to be exhausted by the experience. I just want you to know that it's not insignificant to the individual. Same is true with a transgender person who's sharing with you, right? Being very aware that this is a very important moment in their life.